He once joked he'd leave me for someone better, and everyone laughed. I didn't. After he betrayed me for a fake heiress, I walked away, quietly. He faked heartbreak. She faked her life. I rebuilt mine. No drama, just design. Turns out, I'm the real heiress of both legacy and talent. When my name hit the headlines, he came crawling back. She couldn't handle it. They fought, got arrested. And me? I stitched my silence into power and turned heartbreak into a runway. I didn't scream. I didn't explain. I soared. That's the thing about some jokes. They don't land like jokes at all. They land like warnings. It happened on the night of my graduation. A rooftop in Brooklyn, fairy lights tangled above us like an afterthought. Someone's Bluetooth speaker buzzed with half-working music, and the city blinked in the background, cold and infinite. I had a plastic cup in one hand, a paper-thin smile on my lips, and Ethan's arm lazily resting on my shoulder. 5 minutes earlier, I had leaned into him and whispered, "Thank you. For staying. For being here." He kissed my hair, barely, like muscle memory, and I thought maybe that meant something. Maybe this was the kind of love that survived things. Then he lifted his cup. "To Ava," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If I ever meet someone better, I'll leave her." The silence lasted less than a second. Then came the laughter, sharp, easy, oblivious. One guy howled, "Dude, savage!" A girl nudged me with a wink. "He's just playing. Don't let him go, girl." And I smiled, or something close to it, the kind of expression you wear when everyone else is laughing and you're the only one bleeding. Next to us, a glass tipped over. Red wine spilled onto the white linen tablecloth like blood in the snow. No one noticed, but I did. Later, when we were alone, I asked him, "Did you mean it?" He looked at me like I was the crazy one. "Jesus, Ava, it was a joke." But jokes are only funny when they punch up, not when they slice open the person standing quietly beside you. I didn't say much after that. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. What I did was catalog the feeling, that dull ache just below the ribs, the hum of embarrassment you pretend isn't there. I folded it away like something I'd deal with later, like laundry I didn't want to look at. He kissed me goodnight like nothing happened, and I let him. But something in me had already started walking away, quietly, without shoes, without sound, like leaving a house you once called home, but now only feels like someone else's story. It didn't fall apart all at once. That would have been easier, cleaner, something dramatic enough to earn a proper grieving. But no. Ours unraveled quietly, like thread slipping from a sleeve you didn't even realize was fraying. After graduation, everything changed. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe I just started noticing the things I had ignored before. We didn't break up. We didn't even fight. We just stopped being us. Ethan had just been promoted. Junior analyst, long hours, dinner meetings, drinks with clients. The kind of schedule that left space for everything and nothing all at once. I was spending my days at a tiny design studio in Soho. Unpaid, chaotic, brutally competitive. But it was where I was learning, failing, creating. And for the first time in a while, I actually felt alive. We, however, felt like ghosts, occupying the same apartment but never really touching the air around each other. Our conversations pinned to logistics. "What time are you home?" "Can you grab almond milk?" "I left your suit at the dry cleaner." No more "How was your day?" No more late-night venting, laughing about our weird coworkers, or swapping dreams about someday owning a house with too many bookshelves. I started keeping things to myself. Like the day my creative director said my sketch had actual edge. Or when I stayed late redoing a seam 5 times until it finally sat clean on the mannequin. He didn't ask, so I stopped offering. I tried to pull him back, in small ways. One Thursday, I left him a little card I'd drawn by hand. Just a tiny sketch of him holding a coffee, with a bubble that said, "You'll kill that meeting today." I placed it beside his mug. He never mentioned it. When I cleaned the counter 2 days later, it was still there, face down, untouched. Another night, I invited him to see a student gallery I had helped curate. My first time designing a visual layout. He told me he had a client dinner. I said it was okay, that I understood. I even meant it at the time. Later that night, scrolling through Instagram in bed, I saw a story someone tagged him in. He was at a bar, casual, grinning, drink in hand, sitting beside a woman I didn't recognize. They weren't touching, but still, something in me curled inward. Maybe it meant nothing, or maybe it meant everything. My chest didn't need evidence. It already knew. Even in the company of others, I had begun to vanish. At brunch, when friends asked how Ethan was doing, I smiled and said, "Busy as always," then changed the subject. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't know how to tell the truth without sounding like I was losing. The silence between us became a language, one neither of us was brave enough to translate. He still kissed my cheek goodbye in the morning, still asked if I wanted takeout on Fridays. But the space between those gestures grew colder, more mechanical, like someone mimicking love rather than living it. I stopped waiting for him to ask about my work, stopped checking the clock to see when he'd get home. I started falling asleep with my headphones in, lo-fi beats replacing the conversations we used to have in the dark. You don't mourn love by flipping a switch. You mourn it by pretending a little longer, by folding the corners of your day to make room for someone who isn't folding anything back. But silence is its own kind of cruelty. It sharpens over time. And eventually, it speaks louder than anything either of us ever said. There's a kind of silence that feels full, tense, charged, the kind that hums before a storm, like something waiting to collapse. Then there's the silence we had. Ours wasn't full. It was hollow, echoing, like walking through an empty house that still smelled like its former owners. I think I stopped expecting anything from him the night he forgot about my first show. It wasn't just any day. It was the first time my name was printed on the invite. Ava Morgan, Assistant Visual Director. I had worked for weeks helping design the layout for a boutique fashion pop-up in the Lower East Side. The kind of thing that would never make headlines, but for me it was everything. I told Ethan about it, twice, maybe 3 times. He nodded each time, kissed the top of my head, said "Good luck, babe," like I was going to a dentist appointment. He didn't show up, he didn't call. When I came home, still in my all-black outfit, heels blistering my feet, he was on the couch watching some finance vlog, scrolling on his phone like the world had been entirely normal without me. "Hey," he said without looking up. "Dinner?" I didn't answer right away. I just stood there in the doorway, watching the space between us grow so wide, I wasn't sure I could cross it anymore. That's when I realized we weren't a team anymore. We were 2 people who happened to share a lease and a fridge. 2 people too polite or too cowardly to say what we already knew. I stopped mentioning my work. He stopped pretending to care. Some nights, he came home smelling like a cologne he didn't own. Subtle, nothing overwhelming, just enough to make my skin itch. There were calls he took in the hallway, laughter I could hear through the door, but not clearly enough to understand. Once I heard a woman's voice, brief, confident, the way I used to sound before I started whispering around him. I didn't ask, he didn't explain. We had become experts in avoidance, professionals at pretending. At brunch, I watched a couple 2 tables down, arms touching, fingers brushing unconsciously. I used to sit like that. Now, I couldn't remember the last time his hand found mine without me placing it there first. Even my friends stopped asking about Ethan. I think they sensed it too, the way people can smell rain before it falls. Sometimes, I'd walk through the door with a story at the tip of my tongue, something funny that happened on the train, or a ridiculous fabric mix-up at work. I'd open my mouth half smiling, only to realize he wasn't home. Or worse, he was, but already deep in some screen I no longer existed on. I started sleeping in the studio more often, using late edits as an excuse. Truthfully, it felt safer to be surrounded by mannequins than by someone who looked at me like furniture. Once he watched me getting ready for work. I caught his gaze in the hallway mirror, but he didn't say a word. Not, "You look great," not, "Is that new?" Just a glance and a blink, like I was something mildly familiar, but mostly forgettable. That night, I bought a lipstick I hadn't worn in years. The same shade he once said was a bit too loud. I wore it the next day without telling him. I passed by him in the kitchen. He didn't notice, but I did. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wear it for him. The only time he really looked at me was when I went silent for too long. That day, after I came home from the show, he finally asked, "Is something wrong?" I looked at him. Really looked. Not at his face, but at the weightlessness in his voice, the complete absence of concern. And for once, I didn't lie. "No," I said, "nothing at all." Because by then it was true. Whatever was wrong between us, it wasn't mine to fix anymore. I had already started letting go, not by slamming doors or raising my voice, but by slowly reclaiming pieces of myself I had loaned out too long. The girl who laughed loudly, who asked questions, who fought for things. She was coming back, quietly, carefully, without needing anyone to notice. The thing about intuition is, it never screams. It whispers, quietly, persistently, until one day you stop calling it paranoia and start calling it proof. It began with a photo, not one he posted. Ethan hadn't shared anything in months, but someone else had. A story, just 5 seconds long. Blurry, nothing special. A dinner table, half lit, crystal glasses, a flash of a smile. His smile. And beside him a girl. Long hair, soft waves, designer earrings that caught the light too perfectly to be accidental. She was laughing, leaning in, her body tilted the way people tilt when they've already forgotten who's watching. It disappeared before I could tap back. I stared at the screen, thumb frozen, like it had just confirmed something my heart had known for weeks, but didn't want documented. I didn't ask him about it, not that night, not the next morning either. I just watched. The way he slipped his phone into his pocket when I walked into the room. The way he smiled when her name buzzed on the screen, but never opened the message in front of me. The way his voice softened slightly when he said her name on the phone, Madison. I remember that name, a girl from his office. Someone he had mentioned in passing once, like she was irrelevant. "The new hire from LA," he said, while finishing his coffee, not even looking up. Now, she had become a fixture, a shadow between us. I didn't even know her, but I knew what she meant. One evening, I came home early from the studio. My key jammed a little in the lock, the kind of thing that usually made me swear under my breath. But that day, I was quiet. The door eased open, and I heard his voice. Not yelling, not whispering, just intimate. A tone I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "I like this one," he said. A pause, then a soft laugh. "No, it looks better on you." I didn't step inside. I didn't slam the door. I just stood there for a second longer, then let it close gently again. I went downstairs, sat on the stoop, and waited for 37 minutes before going back up, just long enough for whatever it was to be over. He asked where I'd been. I said I stayed late. He nodded, didn't look up. I wanted to scream, to confront, to cry, but I didn't. And maybe that's what hurt the most, that I didn't even feel shocked, that some part of me had been waiting for this, like the other shoe had been hanging in the air so long. I'd already stopped holding my breath. I sat with it, with the heaviness, with the bitterness of knowing I wasn't enough for someone I gave so much to. I knew I wasn't supposed to think that, not enough, but I did. I was still a woman, still human, still someone who deep down just wanted to be chosen. Instead, I was being replaced, and she was everything I wasn't. Effortlessly charming, polished, the kind of woman who wore confidence like perfume and never had to try too hard. She probably never overthought a text, never showed up too eager, never asked for more than he was willing to give. For a second, just one, I hated her. Then quietly I hated him more, not just for wanting her, but for making me feel like less, just because I wasn't her. That night, I printed the blurry screenshot from the story. Just one frame I managed to capture by accident, but clear enough to end the denial. I pinned it under my sketchbook, not because I needed the evidence, because I needed the reminder that I wasn't imagining this, that the weight I was carrying wasn't made of insecurity. It was real. He wouldn't apologize for hurting me. He'd apologize because he got caught. The next morning, he kissed my forehead like always. The same kiss he gave when he still loved me. The same kiss he gave when he already didn't. I stood in front of the mirror after he left, looked at myself the way I hadn't in a while. Tired eyes, silent mouth. A woman waiting for someone to choose her. That was the last morning I let her wait. I didn't pack everything that day. Just the important things. Sketchbooks, fabric swatches, the ceramic mug my mentor gave me on my first week. The rest could wait. He wasn't home when I left. I didn't plan it that way, but maybe I had hoped for it. No need for speeches, no goodbye that turned into an argument. No pretending we'd fix what neither of us had touched in months. I stood in the middle of the living room that night, barefoot, silent, the glow from the hallway light flickering slightly, like it was struggling to stay on. His jacket was tossed over the chair. My scarf still hung on the doorknob. Everything looked familiar, but nothing felt like mine. It hit me quietly, the way cold seeps into your bones before you even realize you're shivering. I didn't belong here anymore. Not in this apartment. Not in this story. Not with him. And sometimes, knowing you've stayed too long is the only closure you'll ever get. I looked around one last time, almost expecting to feel something. Grief, nostalgia, doubt. But all I felt was stillness. In that quiet, I heard a truth I had been avoiding. I had loved him more than he had ever seen me. And that love, no matter how sincere, had never been enough to make this place mine. I left the key on the kitchen counter. Underneath it, I slid a note, not a letter, just one line. This time, you won't get to leave first. It wasn't meant to be dramatic, just true. He always assumed that when the end came, he'd be the one to walk away. Arms crossed, expression cool, leaving me behind to cry or beg or chase. But I didn't cry, I didn't beg, I didn't chase, I walked. And strangely, it didn't feel like breaking. It felt like air. For the first few hours, I stayed at a friend's place. Someone who didn't ask questions, just handed me a blanket and said, "You don't have to explain." I didn't, not yet. It still felt too fresh to narrate. 2 days passed, then came the messages. Not one, not two, a series. "Where are you? Can we talk? This isn't how it was supposed to go. Ava, please." And then the one that made me pause. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." Miss. He started posting vague stories, sad music, long walks, one of those "healing isn't linear" quotes in a minimalist font. A few mutual friends even reached out, gently implying that I'd broken him. I didn't respond. It was oddly fascinating, watching him perform grief. Like he wasn't mourning me, but mourning the fact that he didn't get to walk away first. Then came the pivot. It was subtle at first. A tagged post here, a dinner pic there. Then, loud and clear, Ethan and Madison, arms linked, smiles curated. The caption read, "Healing looks different on everyone." And just like that, he was no longer the one who was left behind. He was reinvented. Better. Moving on. Happy again. I realized something then. I had never truly broken his heart. I had only bruised his pride. And in that bruise, he had found the perfect excuse to wrap his failure in sympathy, and his rebound in silk. I didn't reply, didn't defend myself, didn't try to correct the version of me he was feeding the world. Because I wasn't in his story anymore. And honestly, I liked mine better. I moved into a small sublet uptown, cramped, quiet, and mine. I stayed late at the studio, worked on a mini capsule collection just for myself. No clients, no pressure, just color, texture, shape. Like therapy, but tactile. People think leaving is the hardest part. It's not. The hardest part is believing you deserve to. And once you do, everything else is just motion. The world didn't stop when I left him. The sky didn't fall. No one stood outside my door with a boombox. But I started sleeping better. And one morning, sipping coffee from that chipped ceramic mug, I realized I didn't miss him. I missed who I thought he was. And that was a grief I could survive. There was no big transformation, no makeover montage, no viral post where I declared I had moved on. Just quiet mornings, long work nights, a coffee mug that stayed chipped, and a closet that slowly filled with pieces I actually loved. I didn't become someone new. I just started listening to the person I used to be. Before I shrunk myself to fit into someone else's outline, I designed in silence. No Instagram, no hashtags, no soft launches. Just sketches on the floor, fabric pinned to cheap mannequins, and a playlist that changed every week, depending on what kind of woman I was trying to dress. My landlord never fixed the heating. The studio smelled like sawdust and coffee filters. But every time I pushed a needle through fabric, I felt like I was stitching myself back together. Slowly, steadily, with care. I didn't miss him. I missed the version of me who thought love would be enough. The girl who believed that staying meant you were strong. I mourned her. Then I let her rest. People around me started noticing the difference, though I never spoke of what happened. My eyes were clearer. My voice didn't hesitate. Even the way I walked changed, like I was no longer afraid of taking up space. Madison and Ethan kept posting. Matching codes, dinner reservations, captions that sounded like affirmations, but read like overcompensation. I didn't engage. I didn't look too long. They weren't mine to worry about anymore. What was mine? A small collection of 5 pieces I'd made from scratch, each one tied to a version of me I'd almost lost. One of my mentors from school reached out of the blue. "I saw your sketches," she said. There's a showcase next month. It's small, but the right eyes will be there. She didn't know everything, but she knew enough to offer the kind of opportunity that came with quiet respect. I almost said no. I almost let the old voice win, the one that said I wasn't ready, that said I needed more time. But then I looked at my hands, calloused from work, steady with practice, and I said yes. Someone tagged me in a post a few days later, someone I didn't know, writing, "Who is she?" under a blurry photo from the studio's hallway. It had 1 like, then 5, then 50. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. There were things about me no one knew, things I had never used because I didn't want to be reduced to a last name. Not in school, not in love. But sometimes, staying silent too long only protects the people who never deserved your silence in the first place. I had kept my family's name off every resume, avoided the spotlight, chose grit over privilege. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to know what I was without it. People treat you differently when they think you were born lucky. They love your shine until they realize they can't outglow you. Turns out, I was enough. Even before the name, even without the noise. I still pass that coffee shop sometimes. The one where he first kissed me. The one where I last saw him laugh like I mattered. But the memory didn't sting anymore. It just existed. Like a song I didn't skip, but didn't replay either. And now? Now, I was ready to step back into the light. Not as someone's girlfriend. Not as the girl who walked away. But as the woman who came back to herself. The night of the showcase, I wore black. Not to blend in, but because I wanted my work, not my wardrobe, to speak. The venue was modest, a converted warehouse lit by soft gold sconces and lined with hopeful designers and half-curious scouts. I stood beside my rack quietly, fingers tracing the seams I'd stitched by hand, listening to the way fabric falls when no one's watching. People stopped. They looked. Some nodded. Some whispered. My name wasn't on a giant banner. Just a small, clean card. Ava Morgan. Capsule number 1. One older woman lingered longer than most. She touched the hem of a structured coat I'd built from dead stock wool and murmured, "This has restraint, elegance, precision." I thanked her. She smiled, held my gaze a little too knowingly, and said, "You've inherited your mother's taste, haven't you?" I didn't flinch, just smiled back and said, "I wouldn't know. I learned this with my hands." But the ripple had started. By morning, a small fashion blog had posted about the show. One sentence buried under layers of analysis caught more attention than I expected. Sources quietly confirm Ava Morgan, maybe the daughter of legendary couture investor Helen Morgan, known for her elusive presence and sharp eye in fashion curation. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it. I went to the studio, made tea, adjusted a sleeve. By noon, the story was on 3 more blogs. By evening, it hit mainstream fashion gossip sites. Heiress in hiding? Who is the mysterious designer behind last night's breakout show? And somewhere between those headlines and the flood of DM requests I didn't open, someone else saw it too. Madison. She posted the story first. Just a blurry shot of a wine glass and the text, "Elmao, wow, people be lying about who they are, just to get famous." Then deleted it. 3 hours later, Ethan followed. His post was more careful. A photo of him and Madison, dressed like a polished couple, captioned, "Some of us don't need last names to be somebody." I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned it off. Not out of anger, not sadness, just clarity. That was the difference between them and me. They were performing. I was building. At the next studio session, my mentor pulled me aside. "You're going to have to deal with it now," she said. "The questions, the press, the investors who suddenly want to meet the girl behind the Morgan." I nodded. "Let them come. I'll still be here, sewing." Because I hadn't spent months clawing my way out of someone else's shadow just to hide under my own name. And if the world finally wanted to look, I wasn't afraid to be seen. I didn't need the Morgan name. But now that it had caught up to me, I'd make sure they saw me first. It didn't happen all at once. Things like this rarely do. The unraveling started in whispers. Fashion assistants trading tea over overpriced espresso, someone's intern leaking a half-truth in a group chat, a tweet that vanished an hour too late. It turned out Madison's background didn't match her story. The last name was borrowed. The trust fund was fiction. Her family estate was a weekend rental, rebranded by clever angles and candlelight filters. Then came Ethan. Not scandalous, just stained. His name began circling in threads about office culture, uncomfortable comments, flirty mentoring that never crossed a line, but blurred enough of them. A junior staffer had quietly transferred departments. A PR girl unfollowed him. His silence wasn't classy. It was calculated. They could have survived it if they had just stopped performing. But Madison doubled down. She posted a carousel of moody portraits, each one styled eerily, like my last collection. Same sharp shoulders, same soft gloves, same hair tucked into a messy low bun. I wasn't tagged, but I didn't need to be. Her caption read, "Authenticity isn't about where you come from, it's who you choose to be." She'd chosen me, or some version of me, the kind she thought people would still clap for. Ethan stayed quiet, except for one post. A photo of him and Madison, posed, polished, tight smiles. The caption, "Some of us don't need last names to be somebody." That one made its way into group chats faster than anything else he'd ever written. But the real fracture didn't come from the press. It came from inside. An anonymous tip linked Madison to a corporate account she wasn't authorized to access. Internal files, marketing decks, nothing criminal but enough to raise questions. Ethan, always too eager to play the hero, stepped in to defend her during a review meeting. Witnesses said tensions snapped, words escalated. Someone threw a phone, someone shoved back. Security intervened. The official report said, "Public disturbance and inappropriate workplace conduct." But the real headline was this. They were escorted out, together, in silence. The power couple was done. A friend sent me the article. Just a 2-line bleep, buried in a finance blog. Young execs Ethan Carter and Madison Vale under investigation for misconduct. Both suspended, pending internal review. I read it over toast. No smile, no satisfaction. Just a faint ache of recognition, like rereading an old journal entry and no longer feeling the person who wrote it. That night, Ethan texted me. Just 3 words. "Can we talk?" In my time, I touch how chocolate. I didn't open it. Some messages say more when they're left unread. I didn't reply. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't even wonder what he wanted to say. Because people don't change when they lose you. They change when they lose the version of themselves they liked best when they were with you. And I wasn't responsible for his becoming. I had work to finish. At the studio, I added the final stitch to the hem of a structured ivory dress. Clean lines, a shoulder slit, bare back. It was the last piece in a series I called Reclaiming. Each one named after something I thought I had to give up to be loved. Voice, space, direction, my own damn name. Outside, The city kept moving. Inside, I rolled the sketch closed, labeled the folder, and placed it gently on the shelf. Not as an ending, but as a beginning I chose. The first time I saw my name in print, my full name, I didn't flinch. It was on the second page of a well-respected design magazine, tucked between an editorial on sustainable tailoring and an interview with a legacy brand's creative director. No headline, no clickbait, just a quiet feature. Ava Morgan's reclaiming elegance without apology. I read it with a cup of coffee gone cold and hands that didn't shake. Not long after, an assistant from a major fashion house reached out, asking if I'd like to consult for a capsule line. I asked for time to think, then asked for full creative control. They didn't blink. Things picked up quickly after that. What started as a single show invitation soon turned into 3, and then more. A studio offered me a residency. Buyers asked to preview my sketches. Editors asked who dressed me for brunch. I kept most of it at arm's length. I didn't come here to be admired. I came to create. My mother called that week. She didn't say she was proud. She didn't need to. She simply said, "Your grandmother would have loved this collection." And that was enough. I never posted about Madison or Ethan, not even when people hinted, not when interviewers danced around their names. My silence wasn't passive. It was purposeful. I didn't climb back just to shout at people who'd stopped mattering. But the tension between them had been simmering for weeks. A friend in PR told me they'd been skipping events, barely speaking in meetings. But the final crack came when Madison found out Ethan had messaged me. Not just once, not a casual check-in. "I didn't know. I was wrong. I want to talk, please." She saw it, read it, lost it. She confronted him in the company lobby, shouting, accusations. Ethan tried to calm her down, said it was nothing, that I hadn't even replied. But Madison wasn't the kind of girl who accepted being second choice, especially not in front of coworkers, and definitely not after building an entire image on being the one. One of them pushed, the other slapped. A phone hit the marble floor like punctuation. Security stepped in. The report said public disturbance. The footage said collapse. It made the tabloids, but barely. No one cared anymore. They had burned too many bridges to leave smoke behind. I didn't react, didn't mention it. I was prepping fabric swatches for Paris. Later that week, I held my first private preview. Clean room, low lighting, 5 buyers, 1 investor. Everything intentional, every stitch placed with a kind of quiet certainty I couldn't have imagined a year ago. Afterward, a young designer came up to me and said, "Your work feels like it belongs to someone who stopped apologizing for being exceptional." I smiled, not wide, just enough. It does, because I wasn't a lesson for someone else to learn. I wasn't a stepping stone or a footnote or a regret. I was a woman who came back to herself. And I didn't owe anyone an explanation for how high I had learned to fly. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel.